coffins float out to sea after Italian cliff collapses. In 2021, a landslide in Italy had a few unexpected consequences, as hundreds of coffins were disrupted in the chaos. In northwest Italy, hundreds of coffins were pushed out to sea when a landslide made the grounds of a century-old cemetery on a cliffside incredibly unstable. There were an estimated 200 coffins seen in the Camogli waters close to Genoa. Adding to the disaster of the event, 2 chapels were also lost in the landslide, as they were pushed onto the rocks that sat below the cemetery. The mayor of the village described this as an unimaginable catastrophe. The walls of the cemetery featured rows of coffins kept in a traditional Italian style. Those working in nearby areas were able to see the walls shake, with some even capturing the footage. The mayor of Camogli, Francesco Olivari, said to CNN, "This type of collapse that happened today is very hard to detect or to predict." However, this area is prone to cliff collapse, and local workers did report having noticed cracks in the cliffs just days before, acknowledging that this could mean a risk of collapse. Camogli councillor Tino Ravello told ANSA, an Italian news agency, that due to strange creaking sounds, the access to the area had been limited and prevented. Following the incident, divers from the fire brigade, Coast Guard boats, and firefighters all took to searching for any salvageable remains of the cemetery. Officials blocked the surrounding areas to prevent the coffins from floating out to sea, though a few days after the incident, only 10 coffins had been recovered. This tragedy is truly devastating to those loved ones of those laid to rest, but no further injuries occurred and the damage was as limited as possible. A Adenosovan jawbone was discovered in a Tibetan cave. An incredible new discovery has revealed something new about the history of ancient humans. Scientists have discovered remains believed to be that of a Adenosovan. They happen to be the most complete remains to date from the Denisovans, an ancient hominin group that remains little known today. The jawbone was discovered at an altitude of more than 3,000 meters on the Tibetan plateau. It's thought to be more than 160,000 years old, and is also the first Denisovan remains found outside the Siberian cave, where a Denisovan was first discovered about a decade ago. The locations of these findings confirm that the hominins were more widespread than the current fossil record suggests. While the jawbone specimen was discovered in China in 1980, archaeologists had not started studying it until the 2010s. Since one of the teeth was still erupting, they believed the remains may have been that of an adolescent. Another first in this discovery is that this is the first time that the analysis of proteins alone has identified an ancient human's remains. Since there was no usable DNA left on the remains, the scientists used the proteins found on the teeth. This has raised hopes that more fossils can be identified in the future, even without DNA. Despite this hope, according to Katarina Duca, an archaeologist at the Max Planck Institute who is running a separate project with the goal of discovering more Denisovan fossils in Asia, DNA analysis is the current gold standard for identifying the species of ancient remains. She speculates if DNA could still be found in this instance, if not on the jawbone, perhaps somewhere in the sediment of the Tibetan cave. Another fascinating aspect of this discovery is that it shows how high of an altitude ancient humans lived, and how that may have influenced the current genetics of Tibetans. In fact, some Tibetans have a gene called EPAS1 that reduces the amount of hemoglobin in their blood, making it possible for them to live at high altitudes with low oxygen levels. The jawbone discovery suggests that this adaptation may have come from Denisovans. From the DNA collected from remains discovered in Denisova Cave in Russia, scientists have been able to determine that Denisovans were a sister group to Neanderthals. These two groups also seem to have interbred, as a recently discovered bone fragment belonged to an ancient human with a Denisovan father and a Neanderthal mother. The discovery of the jawbone may influence scientists to rethink the classification of other specimens that might line up better with the Denisovans. However, the confirmation comes from protein or DNA analysis, which is destructive in nature, so the decision to prove their speculations must come from reasonable justification. Whatever scientists decide, the discovery of this jawbone alone has many implications for the study of ancient humanity.
largest DNA sequencing of Viking skeletons. Hollywood and popular Viking lore has given most of us a very specific idea of what that group of conquerors looked like and where they were from. Many historians believed that they were seafaring warrior tribes from Scandinavia who banded together to conquer and pillage European villages. Depicted as blonde, brutish invaders of Europe for centuries, breakthrough new DNA evidence has suggested that they might not be as alien as first believed. Eska Villeslev, a fellow of St John's College, University of Cambridge, and the director of the Lundbeck Foundation Geogenetic Centre, recently spent 6 years leading a research project to sequence the largest amount of Viking DNA in history and to uncover the true origins of this infamous but mysterious culture. And what they found shocked them. The DNA sequences of over 400 Viking skeletons from 442 bone fragments revealed that many Vikings may not have been as Nordic as we had believed. For example, many of the Viking skeletons in Scotland turned out to actually be native Scots who were buried as Vikings, presumably after having assimilated into the Viking culture. Additionally, Scandinavian genes had already been mixed with genes from nearby Asia and southern Europe, well before the rise of the Viking conquests, indicating that other people likely came to them before they ever began raids across Europe. Also, most of the Vikings had brown hair rather than the stereotypical blonde. The Vikings had a lot more genes from southern and eastern Europe than we anticipated, Villeslev reported. They frequently had children with people from other parts of the world. In fact, they also tended to be dark-haired rather than blonde, which is otherwise considered an established Viking trait. Essentially, it appeared that the Vikings were less native Scandinavians and more diverse genetically. They shared little DNA with that of the Norse peasants living in their homelands and were instead influenced by genes from all over their conquering areas. In fact, the current United Kingdom is estimated to contain up to 6% Viking DNA as a result of these early emigrations and intermingling gene pool. Additionally, where it was previously believed that all of the most powerful men and warriors from neighbouring tribes and villages would form a band to go on raids, genetic evidence indicates that in fact members of raiding parties were usually closely related family units. One such example was a grave for 4 men who had lost their lives in a battle on the same day, who were revealed to have been brothers through DNA sequencing. One of the most important results of this groundbreaking study is the fact that it gives historians and researchers much better historical context for the previously mysterious Vikings. In a time where extensive mobilization and travel was incredibly rare and nearly impossible, these findings depict just how widespread the Vikings were, shedding some light on how impressive and impactful the age of the Vikings truly was. With these results in mind, researchers and historians can begin revising and adapting their understanding of the age of the Vikings.
But what do you make of these recent discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.